Upstairs Neighbor Media presents Drumlin by Zachary Barmania. Read for you by the author. When the soil turns to stone from cold, when creatures fog the air with breath, even then I watched, without eyes to see. Trent University, the bedsheet read. It was draped below the highway sign welcoming my brother and I to Peterborough. I watched the signs grow smaller in the side mirror with my forehead pressed against the glass. My breath fogged the window, and everything vanished. Oh, be careful on the steps going down into Champlain during winter, Sarah. It's a ski hill at the best of times, Pierce advised. He had been offering such wisdoms for the entire drive. They had begun to pass through my head like daydreams. My breath fogged the window again. I said, "Right." Apprehension filled me, catching in my throat. Pierce took his eyes off the road and looked at me. I should shut up. I just want a better first year for you. Pass, that's the main thing. Don't get too bogged down. This town can be bleak sometimes. Keep your perspective. That's one thing you have that few other first years have. Certainly no high schoolers have it. So keep your chin up and you'll get through this. I wasn't sure my life was something I wanted to get through, but I couldn't dwell on that. All at once, we were on campus. It felt like my brother's sedan had passed through a force field. Sooner than I was ready, we were in the parking lot of Champlain College. Concrete rose in spires. Each tower was an impassive sepulchre, watching the families darting around at their feet. Across the parking lot, a forest sprawled out and up into a sharp incline. I knew it was called the Drumlin, because Pierce had told me it was his favorite place to go and relax. He and a nice joint, I was sure. The leaves had only just started to blush and wither, but green still prevailed over red and orange. "You ready for this, bro?" my brother asked. Pierce only ever called me bro when he was trying to be earnest and emotional. It was sweet in his way. I answered him honestly. "No, I'm not." "Nobody is. You're awesome. Stay awesome." We unloaded my material world, such as it was, into my cramped room in K Tower. Even from within, I felt the fractal pattern of interlocking diamond shapes that dominated Champlain's design. Atop this strict hive construction grew a healthy layer of plant life: ivy, pine, and apple trees. The room itself was angular, slightly intimidating in its emptiness. Pierce, as he always did when emotional, felt the need to put on a bit of a show for me. A few posters, maybe some light damage, it'll start to feel like home in no time. I trod on a fallen fruit on the way back to Pierce's car. It was overripe, brown, and stinking on the bricks in the sun. When Pierce got back into his car, I had the desperate feeling of a lost child. The driver's window rolled down, and he stuck his head into the outside air. "One more thing. Don't go into the Drumlin at night. Don't approach any dead birch trees. and seriously, don't listen to them. Trust me. He drove off without an explanation. I was confused, but only for a moment. A dawn swooped in and took me to meet the other arrivals. My friends, it would seem. And so, my new life began. I see the others, all around me. Their fingers are soft and supple. Their arms sway in the breezy canopy. Their seeds fall and take hold, but not mine. I know only the slow joy of rot. After September, I began to identify as a student. The air grew chill, and the Drumlin burned with autumn. Classes began in earnest, and before too long my evening plans were dinner and study in Bata Library. The Otonabee River divided campus in two, the east and west banks. The east bank was where most of my classes took place, but the buildings were more modern and didn't have the aesthetic appeal of the west bank. Bata was nice because I could be alone without being isolated. There were people everywhere, but I didn't have to become the high-pitched, uncomfortably peppy stranger I became when talking to the people here. It was another angular building that looked like a huge bonfire, doused in liquid concrete, left to set. At the end of the night, I left the library and stepped out into a rising river wind. I came back to K-Tower late, carrying my books and laptop. My steps were quiet, so I wouldn't disturb my floor mates. I had forgotten I lived in Champlain. "Sarah, join us! Eric's got Hot Pockets. I've eaten 6 already," Bill yelled over the blasting music. I peered in and gave the party a little wave. Many called greetings to me. I turned to politely deny his request when Dawn Sheena entered. As always, she looked immaculate, even in the plain vest marked Dawn. Her eyes were wide and friendly. She smiled sweetly and often. Now, she looked almost stern. "What have I told you, Bill? Volume?" she said. "Yes," Bill said, changing his tone of voice quickly. "Of course, really sorry." The room's other occupants started to whisper. Overcompensation, I thought. Sheena must have agreed. "You kids," she laughed. "Don Sheena, can I talk to you?" I asked. She led the way up the winding steps of K-Tower to the top floor. Inside, her room was spacious, unlike the other cell-like dorms. Her walls were covered in posters and lights. Books filled the space, her bed, her floor, and windowsill. I even saw a short cactus sitting neatly on the desk. Sheena could have lived here for decades, her and the cactus. This place really was their home. She offered me a chair, so I sat and spoke. "I wanted to ask you something. How can you do it all? I mean, I'm just trying to pass, and I feel like I'm treading water. You can be a Dawn, a student, and have a life? How? You seem happy, too. My brother never had the energy that you have. Tell me your secret." She gave me a smile. "You're a good kid, Sarah, but there's no secret. It's a matter of effort and hope, of doing things you wouldn't normally do. There's a lot of stamina involved, but it all comes down to effort." Effort. I did the work. I made the chit-chat. I put posters of bands on my walls, but it just wasn't happening for me. It was like seeing everything through a thick pane of glass. I left my Dawn's room with a hug and a fistful of condoms. If I hadn't been putting in effort so far, this was going to be a long 4 years. Cobwebs hold dew like pearls in my hair. Hoarfrost catches in my alcoves. Insects writhe beneath me and burrow into me for warmth. I turned my collar up against the October wind flying off the autonomy. The other students and I must have looked like penguins traveling across the tundra, tiny black shapes bobbing miserably along the dark landscape. The ivy was all gone, and cold stone held dominion, attended by the resilient pines. It wasn't raining now, but it had been earlier, and there was a decaying dampness in the air. Another gust flew past my scarf, down my shirt, and into my very being. I shivered. Spider-Man passed me, and I remembered today's date. Halloween had crept up on me again, as it did every year. So, with only a lame line about being a nudist on strike, I attended my first university party. Bill was better than I could have hoped. He led the way to Lady Eaton and reassured me that this would be fun. With foggy breath, we strode through the cold dark towards the sound of music. It was a bonfire. Everyone present had the same look of chilly excitement. Some had the glassy eyes of drunks. I watched as the others drank and smoked and yelled their reverie to the night. Someone jumped over the sparking logs and everyone cheered. Bill stayed with me for a long time, but after nearly an hour, he rose to get a drink and never came back. Not long after, I saw him take a shot and make his own daring leap across the flames. Music, laughter, dancing, sneaking back to dorm rooms to see if the Don's condoms worked. I saw it all. Saw, but never partook. By the time it was midnight, I had lost track of Bill and was heading home with people who, while friendly, I did not know. The trees stood like wooden columns in the Drumlin, an imposing mess of shifting stillness. The others gabbed on loudly as we passed by the narrow mouth of a path. I froze where I stood. "Hey, Samantha," one called after me. "Come on." "Let's go in there," I said. If I could do this, I thought, maybe I could escape my fate. This, my brother's most ominous of rules, seemed a challenge that I could surely overcome. I wasn't afraid of the dark, and I wasn't alone. It seemed no one else wanted to seem unspontaneous, so into the forest we went. One of the guys brought a small bottle of vodka, which he offered me. I drank, because I felt I had gained momentum and did not want to lose it. I was doing something I wouldn't normally do. Tired, we all sat down against some trees, and I looked up at the stars. Between the interlaced fingers of branches above me, they shone in the same place as ever. This place wasn't so bad, I thought, as I closed my eyes for just a second. The seed is the birch. The birch is the seed. I awoke to darkness and eyes frozen shut. I thought I had gone blind. I didn't need sight to feel the cold. When my eyes finally opened, I saw the thin layer of snow which had covered my body. It was still falling through the canopy onto the still forest floor. The air was choked by silence. I tried to rise. I couldn't. I brushed the snow off from my waist to expose my legs. My legs. Where were they? I could feel them. I could. They stretched far below the earth, growing thin as hair. That wasn't right. My heart finally sank when I saw the sturdy white trunk I had slept against. A dead birch. Bark began to swallow my flesh, working in towards my heart. I could not scream. My arms twisted into branches, my fingers into twigs. My eyes froze shut again, and I dreamed a lifetime away. I saw with sightless eyes as I moved through a possible life. I saw my fear fall away as leaves. I saw my roots grow deep. I grew tall and proud. With unfeeling fingers, I reached for that life. I could feel its heat. I grew, I laughed, and then I left. I couldn't. I was too close to that world. I needed only to reach. There came a moment when I couldn't stretch any harder, and that's the moment it stopped. Sleep now. This is Zachary, Barmania. Thank you so much for listening to my performance of Drumlin. Upstairs Neighbour Media is a growing collective of young artists. For more, check out our Instagram or YouTube pages. If you'd like to make a contribution or to get in contact, check out our Patreon page. Thank you, and read on.